Okay, this is Aubrey, and in this picture, she's a little over a year and a half old. So she's a chubby one, and she's got very, very soft features. And she's a little strawberry blonde. Definitely has redheads in her family. So, we're going to start out getting some cleaning up my color here. It's a little bit contaminated, and I want really nice clean color. So let's get this. And, oh dear, here's the plate. So I'm going to put out some Cheap Joe's, that is American Journey, not New Gamboge, Naples Yellow. I like his Naples Yellow because it's really a yellow. It's about being a yellow, which is what I want. I don't want one of those kind of skin colory yellows that they call Naples Yellow. So I'm going to thin this out quite a lot, and I'm going ahead and putting this on dry paper. There's some areas up here that I probably am going to want to have white. I might mask something later. I haven't made up my mind. But for right now, I'm just laying in some Naples Yellow. And I think her little shirt is kind of a lavender. So and it's very pale, but it looks pretty pure, weak lavender, very light. So I think I don't want to get any of this yellow on it. Okay, so we've got skin over here. And I have come back, and after I traced this, I came back and lightened a few places, especially around the fingernails. I actually darkened here at the corner of her mouth. Oh, and I found a place where, I had a little bump on the paper, and it changed the shape of her mouth a little bit, and I fixed that. When it comes to the human face, a tiny little difference is big. It's one thing when you're doing almost people. That's a different deal. But when you are doing a portrait or just something you want to be very convincing, what would I say? A very convincing representation of a person, then, see that little triangle there? Well, that's got the heel of the hand back in there. So skin colors can go there. I begin to suggest a little bit more of the fingers here that we don't have in the photo. So there we go. In fact, maybe I'll just sort of fade that off. Okay. That was step one. I can go take a nap now. Okay, so this is dry. I let it soak in. And I'm going to pick up a little Quin Coral over here. Same thing all over again. You know me. So this is just where we're mixing up. We're making a light mix that will make a skin tone. See, we could put, that is so weak by the time it dries, we could put a blue in on top of that and still get a cool area there, a cool highlighted area, like right up there. Make sure you don't have any crumbles in your paint. I just had a crumble there. Pick up a little bit more color. So come in over this area of the face has got more shadow on it. And this has to be wet enough that when I come back up here, that I don't get a back run. So I don't want a back run on her face. And I don't want to fill this hair all the way. Well, I don't guess it matters. Because whatever I put in behind over here is going to be dark. But let's not pull it down into this part of the... And over here, yeah, I think I'll leave that alone for now. So I'll go to a smaller brush here. And oh, Sophie's on her way up the stairs with her squeaky toy. Let's fade this out. I'll just tilt my paper even. So this is not even, you know, in the picture, I think. That is, I don't think I'm going to have it in the picture. I haven't really decided what I want to do down there. One should have a general idea, but sometimes I just dive in. Okay. You know, it could be a little bit lighter up along here. Got to put a little water back in to hold the place. And make sure I'm not getting a back run at the same time. Okay, yeah, see, I've got a little darker here, a little lighter there. This is mostly overall the same, but got a little darker right there. Okay, it almost seems too dark right now, but it's got to dry, first of all, and secondly, I don't have any darks in the picture right now. So I think it's probably about right. This is what it looks like wet. Okay, so this is set and dried. And look, a thing that I don't do in class because of the time, but it's just kind of a nice thing to do when you start one of these out. Now you've got a couple of layers of color in here. You know, it's settled a little more on the edges in some place, whatever. I would like to settle this into the paper, maybe even a little more. So just take a big brush load of water, because there's not a lot of color in here, so it's not going to move much. There's a tiny bit of color into this, but that may just be coming from the color of the water. But usually you'll move a little bit of color around, but it's a very minor bit. And if you've got any collection of color that kind of collected up at the edges of where you were working, that'll come off too. It will set pencil lines, so if you have any pencil lines that you wanted to not be that dark, oh, like, let's say right here, then this is your last chance to weaken them a little bit if you wanted to. I know some people don't like the magic sponge, and I think there is one that has chemicals in it, but in general you can get it without chemicals. So I would do that, and I would go off and let it set and dry. That's something that you have the luxury of doing with a lot of your paintings at home. Sometimes you just need to, it just weakens the edges just a little bit in a good kind of way. It sort of depends, but a lot of the time we have work that gets a little bit too defined at some of the edges. So that's just a nice treatment. Okay. So, let's see here. What are we going to do next? I think I'm going to put a little bit of just generalized soft color where she's got some. This is just a totally arbitrary choice. We could have started doing almost anything. You see that spot there that's pink? Now, I'm not going to the lips yet. This spot here that's pink, the little spot there on the nose. This area over here is a little pink, and I may make it just a hair pinker than it looks there. And you can see the pink comes way down here, and there's a little bit of pinkishness to the shaded area right there. So I think that's where I'm going to pre-wet this and add some pinks. And then I'm going to look at mixing some color for this, I think, this shirt. So I'm going to pre-wet the whole thing. And one of the advantages of this, now I already pre-wet it once. One of the advantages of this is that we're probably removing a little bit of sizing as we're doing this. But we're replacing it with paint too. So it's kind of, I don't know. You know what they say about 6 of one and half a dozen of another, whatever that means. Okay, let's see. So that's my Queen Coral. Queen Coral does not look all that bright like this. It's really pretty bright, and let's see. I just don't have enough of it out here. And I didn't have my brush wet enough either. Now see, there's some little bitty crumbles where I picked that color up. I want to be sure and get the crumbles uncrumbled. And then how much color I put down here depends on how wet this area is. If it's real wet, I can use quite a bit of color. I'm pulling some of this up because, for one thing, I didn't have it positioned very well. Comes down here, and it's not up here over this cheekbone area. So let's pull that up. That might be about right. And we'll put a little over here. This area is still pretty wet. So what I don't want is there's places I don't want to get this on. So I'm keeping it back away from the nose right here. I'm just going for pinky color. In fact, I may just pull up a little bit of moisture off of the nose there so that when I put this little bit of pink on here, it doesn't spread too far. You may find this a little bit hard to do. This might not have been the best place to start. Put a little there. I'll put a little. I'm not keeping it away from her lips, but I'm not trying to put in lip color yet. There's kind of a shadowed place under here. You see this little spot right there that's above the lip? If you look at her expression, her lips are kind of pursed in a way that makes this part dip in a little bit. And when it does, it's got a little bit of shadow on it. So I just chose to put a little bit of that shadow in already with, let's see, let's take just a little color on the tip of my brush. It's not as wet as it used to be. So I could kind of put some of this color right around here and right around there. I love this little pursed mouth. Their mouth is sort of pursed but smiling. She's very, very pleased with what she's doing. She's really enjoying this. And I think that that is just really special, her expression. So I guess what I'm doing here is I'm beginning to put in a little bit of shading, and I'm doing it with the pink, but I'm doing it very lightly because we will cool a lot of these areas. So see, I can pick up a tiny amount of paint like that just on the tip, no, a little more than the tip of the brush. And the reason I'm doing that is because I did it a minute ago and it worked well for me with this pigment and this amount of water and the amount of wetness of the paint. It was working well. And since it was working well, I'll go ahead and do more of it. You know, I think that some of y'all think that every time I pick up the paint that I know exactly how it's going to act. And I really don't. See, you can see this brush is got a lot of the water off of it because you can see the curve in it. And the moisture is just, the sheen is just beginning to go away. But really, I'm not going by looking at the sheen so much as by just how the paint is acting. And I adjust what I'm doing to the way the paint is acting. I think I can get a little more color on up here without it spreading everywhere. Because I got to leave that little highlight area there on the side of the nose. But I'm getting these nice soft edges on this cute little turned up nose. Oh, that's just cute beyond belief. And if you look at her lips real closely, you'll have to study your photo. You're going to see that the edges of her lips are not really well defined. That they've got a very soft edge to them. And I'm going to really work to keep that as we work on this. So I'm still able to drop in, or not drop in, I'm stroking in now. It's just barely got any color on there, and I'm just barely touching the paper, but I am stroking it. Now this area doesn't need to be red, but needs to be darker, and so I can use the red here. I'm going to wash that brush off here and spread that a little bit. Here appears to be near the edge of her little jawline. And this down under here is just baby fat. Just picking up a little bit. Spreading it just a little bit. Oh, I love what's happening here. See all that softness? That's really, really nice. I try to drop in a little bit of red here. Now these areas are cooler, but I like to layer it. I am trying to keep this soft because too much red here is just going to overpower things. So what we're doing is we're just getting a little bit of shape in there. I'll just put the red on the eyeball too. You can't really see her eye color, I think it's sort of hazel blue or something. I should remember it's my grandchild, great-grandchild. Here. Her father has brown eyes and the mother has, maybe light. Don't anybody tell them that I don't remember. I have to stop and think about my own kids sometimes. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush off. But I'm not letting much of any water down because this is still moving very nicely for me without much water. But see, this is very low pressure. I know some of y'all see me doing a lot of little strokes here, and you might imitate that, and you might just be overworking paper that's too dry or something. This is just coming along very nicely. And right here, so I make an area behind the nose, but really there's a lot of pink right in here too. And I think it's time to stop. So I need to smooth that area out right there. Oh, you can already see how, she's self-satisfied. That's the look of this. Very self-satisfied. That's so funny. See, I got out of the line right there, but this is going to be red. A red marks a lot, and so it doesn't matter. I'll just paint the other color over it and it'll never show. So what are we going to do here? I haven't decided. I'm wetting it down, and then I'll figure it out. This brush does not have a good point anymore. This is the kind of brush I love. It's a nice thirsty brush. So if I need something with a good point, I can come in and touch up things with this little synthetic brush in little places as I'm working. Maybe I'll just keep it over here handy and we'll try that strategy. So I'm looking and I can see some areas on her knuckles. See right here? It's a little darker right there and here. So you'll have to look at yours because I can't really keep this in the frame. But I'm going to approximate what I see here. Whoa, that was a lot of color there. Well, let's just use more of it. And it's going to get pink down here between the fingers. This area is pink. Okay, let's work with that. So, see, I didn't wipe the tip. Let's see what it does. Well, it's being agreeable here. So what I do is, remember, I respond to what the paint tells me how it's going to operate, and then I decide what way I'm going to handle it. And I don't necessarily consciously decide that anymore. A lot of that just happens. Oh dear, it looks a little granulated. I know I had it really wet. Well, this paper seems to have soaked up the water really fast. I better stop right there. I put water on that thumb, and that thumb is dry. Yeah, I was just a little too careful with how much water I put down. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to leave that alone. Except for maybe right there. Okay. So let's do something with this thumb. Thumb is wet. Need some color right here, and a lot right under here. So there's a little bit of a shape around the nail, and I'm making that soft-edged with just a little bit of pink. You can see my pencil lines there. And if they turn out to be too strong, I'll go back and put a touch of, I'll mix some white ink with something and with a flesh tone and kind of cover it if I decide it needs it later. Okay, let's let that go. And I could go ahead and put a little bit more. Well, that has to dry. No, I'm going to mix a shirt color. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get some, not cerulean, I think ultramarine. By the way, Holbein has a color that looks just like that. It's got a lot of white in it. But I'm not using it because most of my students don't have it, and I don't normally work with it. So, okay, so I've got ultramarine, but needs some red in it. Oh, where could I find some red with a limited palette? Huh. Whoops. Didn't mean to get. You just need a little bit of red into this, not much. Okay. That looks a little strong. For the most part, I'm going to just add water on the shirt as I work. This is dry enough. It isn't dry like I'd like it to be. Oops. No, I've got some other places, so I'm going to have to dry this. Okay, here we are. Now, like I was saying, okay, this is dry. See what it looks like. This is down below where we're going to be working. That is a little stronger than what's in the photo. I could mix a little white into it. It could go a little bluer, actually. I'm trying to make up my mind because I kind of like it. I think, oh dear. So the Sharpie comes down here somewhere. Okay. I think I'll use it real thin. Yeah, there. See how thinned out I've got it right here? And a color like that tends to separate. You have to keep stirring it. I could try to paint around this hair. Except I don't know where the hair's going to be. Maybe I'll just do something like that for now. So I left some little light areas. It wouldn't have been a bad thing to have put some polka dots or something on this shirt. I just love polka dots on anything. Oh, you can see a brush stroke there. Because now I've gone thinner, which is fine. Keep it. So you see, this is different in places. I'm not going to try and smooth all that out. I don't want to. I don't want it to look like a photograph. There are things about it that I would like to get just right, but that doesn't necessarily make it like a photograph either. Okay. Pause. Okay. Yeah, I let that go too dry on me. That's a little surprise. And I didn't think that I got this wet enough to wash a bunch of sizing off. I did wet it down a couple of times. This is the same paper I always use out of the same pack. So I don't know. Now I've got clean water over here. Let's look at her forehead. See, there are a lot of places on her face that are very cool. So I don't need much color down in these areas because they'll, I don't know if I want her to look quite that cool. Maybe I do. I'm going to play with this, but I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more reds down here. And I will probably wind up painting these bangs in opaquely. I could mask or paint around, but they're just not significant enough there. They need to be there, but I think I'll keep it. I think I'll keep it gentle. Now, in part, this is also because maybe I might be doing one and decide, oh, this would be more dramatic if she had heavier bangs or something. Let's just say that. But this is kind of meant to be a gift eventually, and so of her, and so I'm not going to take that kind of artistic license with it. So I'm wetting down the whole face instead of just part of it. For one thing, I might come down in here and do something. Her head looks narrower right now than in the photo to me, even though I know it's identical. Okay, there we go. Now what are we going to do? Well, I still got this same mixture of pink over here. I wiped the blue out of it because I'd gotten it contaminated. I'm going to take really weak color here and just do a little bit of shaping on the head with it. So mostly floating it into very moderately wet areas. And remember, this is backlit. I mean, not backlit, but it's side lit over here to kind of an extreme degree. It has a similar effect to being backlit. In fact, where the light was coming from, if this chair wasn't here, she would be totally backlit. Let's put it like that. So I'm just getting in this part of the forehead. I need to come down here too, because this is just going to be darker. And since it's going to be darker, it's going to have reds that have to darken too. I mean, that would be one component of the darker skin. You know, it's important to squint, but when the shadows are this subtle and soft and light, squinting doesn't do a whole lot for you. Just pulling in a little bit more color. I don't like, see, I've got pencil lines in there. That will get darker there, but right now it makes up blemish that's not pretty. Oh, and right here, we definitely need more color right here. That's just a place that I didn't put any color a while ago. Okay. Now, I can't do this little area right here because that needs to be, the side of the nose needs to be dry. I could put a little bit more color over in here, though. I've still got a sheen on the paper, just barely. This is actually a dark spot in the hair. See how I'm just touching in little bits of color and letting it, just let it bloom there. So I've built up a little bit of color in several places. I think I should probably leave this spot alone because I still have a little too much water. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Let's come down here and see what to do with these fingers. I'm going to re-wet this and see if the color will move a little bit for me and maybe soften. This is not particularly going to be a problem, but yeah, I think that's going to smooth out some. Let's go ahead and put more water in down here. I just didn't get enough water on it. Okay. Remember, it's a combination of the amount of water, like if you're painting wet and wet. It's how wet is the surface and how wet is your brush. So if you have a lot of water on the surface, you may want a less wet mixture, less water in your paint. If you've got a dry surface or sort of dry surface, then you may want a juicier mixture to go down. This is about all we can tell about this, and then that finger's made up. And then here I'm just pulling it on down into oblivion because this is off the page. I just haven't decided quite where off the page is going to be. I could take the tiniest bit of color. Do something like that. Okay, here is where we stop today. Bye. I gotta hold her up. So I don't have a very good place to hold her up here, but I'm trying to get her approximately right. There we go. That's her.